Hey everybody, John Wagnon here with DevCentral, and we are bringing you another Lightboard lesson video. And today we're going to talk about multi-factor authentication and a pretty cool solution that F5 has with a company named Duo, and just kind of talk about why it's important and all that stuff. So I'll give you a quick scenario. There was this university here in the United States that they had about 600 or so staff that were subject to this spear phishing email attack. And so the attacker sends in this spear phishing email, and I think like 10 of them or so out of the 600 actually clicked on it, put in their username and password, that kind of thing, which is not a huge percentage, 10 out of 600, but nonetheless, 10 of them clicked on it. And then the attacker was able to get their username and password and then was able to log into the university's internal application that controls their payroll, information, and was able to redirect the pay from those employees back to the attacker's bank account. So he got, he's getting 10 different people's paychecks for a little bit. So that's not a bad payday for the attacker. So anyway, whenever that happened, the university, staff were like, hey, we need to figure out something more than just what would be a single factor authentication, like the username and password. We need to implement something else. We need multi-factor authentication here to guard against that kind of stuff. So I'll draw a quick scenario up here. So as I mentioned before, you may have internal employees who are ultimately going to try to access some kind of maybe internal application or that kind of thing. And maybe that's done via what I'll call like a web portal page. And so on this web portal page, let's say you have things like, like a travel application. If you want to go and book your next flight or your rental car or hotel or whatever, let's say you have some kind of, email, internal email system, or this is the way that you access your email via this web portal. Or let's say you have maybe a payroll application, or maybe there's some kind of internal training application that you want to access. So like on this web portal, you may have all these different applications that you can get to. So the idea is that the employees need to log in via what we'll call a single sign-on. So basically log into this web portal one time, and then they have access to all these different internal applications. And so that's kind of the cool effect that you're trying to go after. But a lot of times what people will do is, like I said, they'll maybe connect to like a VPN, and they'll use like a username and a password in order to connect to that VPN. And the VPN will use that username and password and maybe authenticate to like Active Directory or something like that, to authenticate the user. And once they get through, then they're allowed into this web portal, and then they can get all this stuff. So that's what happened with this university spear phishing thing, is that the attacker was able to get the username and password, could log in to the VPN because they had that, and because there was no secondary or multi-layer authentication in place, then the attacker just got right in. He went straight for the payroll system, and he was like, hey, instead of sending it to bank account 1234, send it to 5678. Well, these guys the payroll guys didn't know, so they're like, okay, that's fine, because you were authenticated and you were a legitimate user. So then suddenly it's like, hey, now the paycheck's going to the wrong place. All right, so that's kind of the scenario here. So effectively what you want is your employees to be able to log in to this single sign-on page, this web portal that has access to all these different internal applications. But you want more than just a username and password to guard all this stuff because of the scenario, the example that I just gave, and there's many other ones out there. All right, so what you can do now with F5's APM, that's our Access Policy Manager, along with Duo, you can introduce this really easy, efficient multi-factor authentication. So you still have the employees here that are looking to access, the web. I'll just call this the portal page over here. All right. So what they're going to do in this case is you'll have the APM here in line, and employees will access the APM, and this frankly is a VPN. The APM does like all kinds of different stuff. Like I said, it's the Access Policy Manager. But in this specific example, we'll talk about the VPN aspect of it. And so the employee would use a username and password right here into the APM. APM would take that and it would authenticate against, say, Active Directory. And you could build out what's called a virtual policy editor in the APM. So you can authenticate against whatever you need, but Active Directory is a pretty common one. So you'd authenticate. If that comes back good, then you're good on the APM side. And then at that point, you would also, using the Duo security feature, you would introduce a Duo proxy machine. And it's super easy to set up. You can download the executables. You can set it up on Windows or Linux or Mac, or there's a lot of different options here. But essentially, once the user authenticates to the APM, then the APM would send an authentication request to this Duo proxy, and then the Duo proxy machine on port 443 would send a request out to the Duo security service. So I'll just say Duo security service out here, and then this thing would say, hey, this user has been authenticated via APM, but we want to do this now multi-factor. We want to do this second thing. So the Duo security service would say, hey, user, I'm going to send you another challenge or another form of authentication that we need to get through before you're finally allowed back into the portal. Typically what they do is they'll send a challenge to the employee's cell phone. So I'm going to say cell phone over here. And don't you know that we all have cell phones these days, right? So you can just download the Duo app on your cell phone, whatever device you've got, if it's Android or Apple or Google or whatever it is, you download the Duo app onto your cell phone. And so once all this takes place and you've authenticated here, and then the proxy sends the challenge to the security service, this thing is going to instantly send a challenge back to your cell phone. And your cell phone is going to, there's a few different options here. You can do what's called a push authentication, push auth. And the push auth is basically where the service is going to pop up on your cell phone. The application is going to pop up this, hey, there's a request to log in now to this whole portal thing. And so you would just hit either approve or reject. It's a big green check mark or a big red X. And so you can hit either one. So if you're not the one requesting this, and then suddenly it pops up on your cell phone, you hit the red X. It's not a big deal, and then they don't get through. But if it is you, of course, you hit the green check mark and you're good to go. So that's the push authentication. So as soon as you hit the green check mark, it pushes the authentication back to the security service, which then allows you access. But you don't have to use that. They have a call me, so they will actually call your cell phone, and then you can interact that way to say, yes, good to go. And then the other one is a passcode. So the passcode, the way that one works is the Duo security service would send a passcode to your phone. It would pop up on your phone via the Duo app on your phone. And then you would take that passcode, copy it, and go back into the APM page and say, hey, I need to put in the passcode that I have now been given. And once I put in that passcode, then you hit go, and then everything is good to go. It authenticates and you're good. So anyway, so that's the way it works. A lot of people will use this push authentication because it's super easy. It just goes right to your cell phone, you hit a green check mark, and you're done. But you can use any of these things. They also have a little feature, by the way. I'll put remember me. Remember me. All right, it's a little box that you can configure here. This is also on the APM page that you would see. Remember me, and then you can say for like blank number of days, and then and you can configure that when you set all this stuff up. So if you just want it to be like 1 day, or maybe you want 5 days or whatever, then you could say, hey, if you remember me for say 5 days, let's say, then the user can check that box up here. Again, this is on the APM. And then that way for 5 days, the employee will not have to go back through this whole thing as they access this same portal. So that's a really cool feature. So based on your security, needs and all that, you can set that up for however many days you want, or you don't even have to put that on there at all, and then that forces people to go through this every single time. So once this authentication has happened on the cell phone, then it sends it back to the security service, and it's like, hey, this is good to go, the security service back here, and then finally, once all that has authenticated and everyone is good, then now you're in this portal page and you can access all of these different things. So it's a super easy thing to set up. It's very user-friendly on the employee side. And it adds an extra layer of security, which again, in the case of that university system that we talked about, where the spear phishing and all that, frankly, that would not have happened, because if the attacker were to send you a spear phishing email and you still click on the thing and you put in your username and password and they steal your username and password, then the attacker then has to go back in and use your username and password to then authenticate to be able to change the payroll system on this end to redirect the funds to his account. Well, when he comes in and all he's got is username and password, and you've got this two-factor or multi-factor authentication built in, then he's never going to get past this point. He's never going to be able to get into the portal. So even if your username and password were compromised, you're still safe right here. So it's just a good way to do business, and it adds security to your network. It keeps your employees safe, and life is good, right? So like I said, APM along with Duo is a super convenient, simple, powerful solution that you can use to provide multi-factor authentication to your employees for your internal applications. So hey, thanks for hanging in there and watching this Lightboard lesson video with us today. If you like this thing, click up here on our DC logo and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you guys out there in the community.